He walked into the cafe with snow still clinging to his coat, a quiet man carrying the weight of old battles. Beside him, his German Shepherd service dog moved with calm purpose. And when Emma Hartley handed him a cup of hot coffee, she did it with the simple kindness Silver Creek had nearly forgotten. But her act of decency was met with punishment. In front of customers, in front of the dog who never left the soldier's side, the regional manager fired her on the spot. No warning, no mercy, just a cold sentence meant to break her. What none of them knew was that someone had captured everything. And before the day was over, the truth would ripple through the town. Veterans would gather, a fallen soldier would step forward, and justice, long overdue, would come walking through the snow. If you believe in standing up for what's right, share this story, leave a comment, and subscribe for more tales that honor courage and humanity. Meeting in the falling snow, winter pressed against Silver Creek in a pale hush, the sky shedding slow curtains of snow that softened every rooftop and pine branch. Noah Hale pushed through the cold as he made his way toward Brookside Café. He was a tall man in his early 40s, broad-shouldered despite the fatigue carried in the lines of his posture. His winter navy coat brushed against his thighs as he walked with a slight hitch in his left leg, the old battlefield injury that never quite healed. His face was angular, marked by years of duty, a square jaw, a straight nose, and a trimmed beard where strands of silver threaded through darker brown. His eyes, a deep and steady brown, often looked warm when relaxed but sharpened without warning, as if instinct could still summon the soldier in him. Beside him trotted Ranger, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with black and tan fur and proud ears perked toward every sound. Ranger wore a black service harness with bold white letters reading, "Service Dog, Do Not Pet." His stride was calm, controlled, almost regal, yet his amber-brown eyes moved constantly, reading the world with the alertness only a trained canine carried. Ranger was serious when working, softer only in the presence of Noah, his loyalty etched into every movement. The bell over the cafe door chimed as they entered. Warmth drifted toward them, along with the faint scent of cinnamon and ground coffee. Behind the counter stood Emma Hartley, a woman of 31 with soft auburn hair pulled into a loose bun, a few strands falling near her cheeks. She wasn't tall, but her posture held confidence earned through years of running the place. Her skin was pale from the winter and long shifts, and her hazel eyes carried both kindness and the perpetual caution of someone always bracing for tomorrow's demands. Emma worked with quick hands and a warm smile, but just beneath the surface there lingered a tension that came from dealing with a supervisor who never seemed satisfied. When she spotted Noah's uneven stride, her expression softened. "Cold morning," she said, voice gentle. "Let me get you something hot." Noah nodded without many words. He had spoken more to Ranger this week than to people, and Emma's sincerity struck him in a way he had not expected. Ranger settled quietly at his feet, his posture alert but unthreatening. Emma prepared the coffee with steady hands. Though Noah noticed a tremble, she quickly hid. She set the cup in front of him, steam curling upward. Under the glow of the cafe lights, she looked like someone carrying more weight than she ever admitted to. But before Noah could thank her, the cafe door slammed open. A gust of winter rushed in alongside Mark Lensing, the regional supervisor. He was a tall, lean man in his late 40s, dressed in a charcoal overcoat and a blue tie pulled too tight around a narrow neck. His face seemed pinched, as if he disapproved of the world in general. Behind him followed Caleb Turner, a city inspector with a thin mustache and a habit of looking down his nose at everything he surveyed. Mark strode inside with the stiff authority of a man who enjoyed being feared. His eyes swept the room, then narrowed when he spotted Ranger beneath the table. "Emma," he barked, his voice sharp enough to cut through the Fizz Cafe's gentle chatter. "Is that an animal inside my store?" Emma stiffened. "Mark, he's a service dog." Inspector Turner stepped forward, adjusting his clipboard. He was a wiry man with pale skin and watery blue eyes, the kind that always seemed to search for something wrong. "Service dogs must be documented," he declared flatly, "and even then, they are a sanitation concern." Noah's jaw tightened, though he didn't rise. Ranger looked up at him once, reading the change in his breathing. Emma swallowed hard. "He has every right to be here. The law?" Mark cut her off with a raised hand. "Enough. You allowed a violation during an inspection." His words grew colder. "You're done here, Emma. Effective immediately." The cafe fell silent. A spoon clattered somewhere. Someone gasped. Emma's face drained of color. Shock hit first, raw and unguarded. Then came anger, pushing warmth back into her eyes, followed by something deeper, hurt, betrayal. The sting of realizing loyalty meant nothing to the man who controlled her paycheck. "I was doing what's right," she whispered, her voice cracking despite her attempt to steady it. Mark only shrugged, already turning away as if she were an inconvenience he could sweep aside. Noah rose slowly. His height cast a long shadow across the floor. Ranger gave a low, controlled bark. Not loud, but precise, the kind that signaled a warning more than a threat. Emma blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. She untied her apron with trembling fingers and placed it on the counter. Without another word, she walked through the door and into the falling snow. Noah watched her go. Her shoulders were rigid, but he saw the shiver of devastation beneath her coat. Something in him stirred, the part of him shaped by loss, by missions gone wrong, by promises he could not keep. The world had taught him to step in when unfairness reared its head. Yet stepping in now meant crossing lines he had drawn for himself after leaving the service. Lines that had kept him detached, safe. Ranger nudged his leg gently. It was a simple touch, yet it echoed louder than any command. Noah exhaled, a heavy breath fogging in the winter air. Outside, Emma's figure blurred between falling flakes. Noah had to choose. Would he walk away, or would he finally step towards something? Someone who deserved to be defended. The soldier returns, the snow deepened by evening, turning Silver Creek streets into white corridors of silence broken only by the soft crunch of footsteps. Emma Hartley moved through the falling flakes with quick, uneven breaths, her boots sinking slightly into the powder as she tried to outrun the humiliation burning behind her ribs. Her auburn hair, loosened from the messy bun she had worn all day, clung to her cheeks with melting snow. Her face was pale from cold and shock, and the tremor in her hands betrayed what her clenched jaw tried to hide. Behind her, Noah Hale followed at a steady but uneven pace, each step marked by the familiar stiffness in his injured left knee. He had pulled his navy coat tighter against the wind, though the cold seemed to bother him less than the sight of Emma's shoulders trembling ahead. Ranger walked close to his heel, the German shepherd's fur dusted with snow, his ears sharply alert to Emma's shaky breathing and Noah's growing tension. "Emma," Noah called softly. She stopped, her back rising and falling, with a heavy breath she did not want him to see. When she turned, her hazel eyes flickered with a grief too deep for words. "You did the right thing," he said gently. "I won't let this disappear." Emma gave a tired, bitter laugh. It was small and fragile, the sound of someone who had lost much more than a job today. "I don't want anyone else dragged into this. Not again." Her voice cracked on the last word. Noah recognized that tone. He had heard it from fellow soldiers who carried memories they could not name. Emma's past was unknown to him, but pain always left familiar signatures. Ranger stepped forward and nudged Emma's hand once, a quiet gesture of comfort, his warm breath misted in the cold air. Emma blinked, surprised, then whispered, "Thank you, big guy," with a small, wavering smile, but the heaviness did not lift. Noah watched her walk away down the snowy street, her figure fading into the winter haze. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the same old pull in his chest, the instinct to step in, to help, to protect. Something he had sworn to turn off when he left the SEALs, something that never truly turned off at all. That night, long after the sun had vanished behind the Cascade Mountains, Noah returned to Brookside Café with Ranger at his side. The evening air was sharp, and yellow lights glowed behind the frosted windows. Inside, a handful of customers huddled over warm drinks, their faces tight with whispered conversations about what had happened earlier. Mark Lensing stood near the counter, his dark overcoat draped across a chair, as if he owned the place. His narrow face was flushed with irritation. His thinning sandy hair was slicked back too carefully, revealing a high forehead and features sharpened by years of self-importance. Mark had always believed control equaled respect, and losing grip of either frightened him more than he admitted. Noah stepped inside, the murmurs quieted, Mark's eyes narrowed. "You again? The dog isn't allowed here without the manager's approval, and she no longer works for this company." Noah held himself still, though tension hummed beneath his calm exterior. "I'm here to talk," he said, voice low but steady. "Talk?" Mark scoffed, gesturing dismissively with one long-fingered hand. "Your friend violated company rules. She knew the risks. If she wants to protect strays and stragglers, she can do it someplace else." Ranger's ears snapped forward. The dog shifted, stepping slightly in front of Noah, body stiffening like coiled rope, his amber gaze locked on Mark. Not threatening, but watchful. A few customers exchanged uneasy glances. Noah took one step closer. "You fired a woman who upheld the law and protected a veteran's rights," he said evenly. "All you protected was your ego." Mark bristled, face reddening. "Watch yourself. I can have security escort you out." "You could," Noah replied, his tone unchanging, "or you could acknowledge that what you did was wrong." Mark's voice rose. "She's a liability, and you're just a drifter looking for trouble." Ranger let out a short, precise bark. It wasn't loud, but it split the room like ice cracking. Mark stumbled back a half step, startled. Before anything escalated further, a young woman near the back rose from her seat. She was a slender brunette in her mid-20s, with a round face and freckles across her nose. She wore a green wool coat and held her phone in shaking hands. Her name was Lila Torres, a local art student who often came to the cafe to work. Tonight her brown eyes were wide with fear and determination. "I recorded everything that happened this morning," she said, lifting her phone slightly. "I was right by the window. People need to see what was done to Emma." Mark paled. Lila continued, voice steadier now. "She didn't violate anything. She helped someone who needed help. The whole town should know." A man at another table, a mechanic with broad shoulders and grease-stained nails named Russell Clay, known for his straightforward honesty, nodded and added, "Post it. Folks here won't stand for this kind of thing." Noah felt the room shift. A current of solidarity gathered like a quiet storm. Mark's bravado faltered. "If you post that, it'll tell the truth," Noah finished for him. Mark's eyes darted from face to face, searching for support he could no longer find. His voice fell to a whisper, edged with desperation. "I'll call the police." "Go ahead," Russell said, crossing his arms. "We'll show them the video too." Noah met Mark's gaze one last time. "I warned you this wouldn't stay buried." He turned toward the door, Ranger following with a purposeful trot. As Noah stepped into the night, he saw snow drifting beneath the street lamp, soft, quiet, indifferent to the turmoil blooming in Silver Creek. But he also saw something else. Lila stood at the cafe window, her phone in hand, already uploading the truth. By morning, the entire town would know what had happened, and nothing would be the same. The storm over the snowbound town. By dawn the next morning, Silver Creek was awake in a way the quiet winter town had not been in years. Snow blanketed every rooftop and muffled the streets, but nothing could quiet the rising swell of anger and solidarity. The video of Emma Hartley's firing had spread through town like wildfire, shared from porch to porch, from diner booths to shop counters. People watched it with shaking heads, muttered curses, or stunned silence. A woman punished for kindness, a veteran defending her, a service dog treated like a nuisance instead of a lifeline. The story stirred something deep in Silver Creek. Outside Brookside Café, a growing crowd gathered despite the bitter cold. Among them stood Tom Willis, a retired Army medic in his late 50s. Tom had a thick build softened by age, a salt and pepper beard, and calm gray eyes that still held the shadows of deployments long past. His hands, large and calloused, were tucked into his faded brown coat as he nodded respectfully toward Noah Hale. "Son," Tom said, voice rough but kind, "we saw what you did and what they did to her. We're here because it isn't right." Beside him stood Janice Crowley, a thin woman in her mid-60s with short silver hair and warm brown skin, marked by laugh lines and grief lines alike. She wore a knitted red scarf and carried a determined expression that made her look taller than she was. Janice had lost her husband, a Marine, years ago. She knew injustice when she saw it. More veterans arrived, more locals, students, shopkeepers, even a few truckers passing through. They formed a wall of bodies in winter coats in front of the cafe, demanding Mark Lensing correct his mistake and apologize to Emma. But inside the cafe, Mark paced like a man whose control was slipping through his fingers, his face flushed red as he peered through the frosted window. "I won't be intimidated," he snapped, straightening his tie even though his hands trembled. Noah stepped forward just as Sheriff Daniel Cortez arrived. The sheriff was a tall, broad man in his early 50s, his hair close-cropped and streaked with gray. His skin was tanned from years outdoors, and a thin scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, a memory from his service as a Navy officer before joining law enforcement. Sheriff Cortez carried himself like someone who chose calm over force, but whose calm itself was a warning. "What's going on here, Mark?" the sheriff asked, folding his gloved hands behind him. Mark gestured frantically toward the crowd. They're disrupting business. They're causing trouble because of that woman and her. The sheriff's voice cut clean through the air. That woman followed the law. She allowed a service dog into a public establishment, and you fired her for it. A hush fell. Even the wind seemed to pause. Sheriff Cortez raised a brow. In fact, the only violation I'm seeing is your attempt to intimidate an employee for obeying federal regulations. Mark's mouth opened and closed like he couldn't find air. But the storm was only beginning. Two black SUVs pushed through the snowy street, tires crunching over frozen slush. On their sides was the silver emblem of Harper and Finch Corporate Compliance, the investigative wing of the Brookside Café chain. A team of inspectors stepped out, wearing navy coats and carrying sleek black cases. At the front was Sandra Klein, a corporate investigator in her early 40s. She was a tall woman with sharp facial features, high cheekbones, and straight blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun. Her icy blue eyes shifted quickly, assessing everything with clinical precision. Sandra's posture, ramrod straight, purposeful, hinted at a past in federal audit before joining corporate work. Rumor said she had once uncovered a multi-million-dollar fraud inside a major retailer and had no tolerance for lies. "Mr. Lensing," Sandra said, voice cool as the snow drifting around them, "we received a substantial number of complaints regarding your actions, and the video circulating online is concerning." Mark sputtered. "Out of context. All of it." Sandra didn't react. "We'll determine that ourselves." The crowd murmured with anticipation. Inside the cafe, tension brewed darker than coffee. The inspectors spread out, examining documents, questioning staff, and studying the spaces where Mark claimed violations occurred. Meanwhile, outside, more townspeople gathered as snowfall thickened. In the midst of the chaos, Noah stood near Emma, who had been persuaded to return after multiple calls urging her to witness whatever was unfolding. She looked nervous, cheeks red from cold and embarrassment, her auburn hair tucked under a gray beanie. "You don't have to stay," Noah told her quietly. Emma shook her head. "I do. For once, I don't want to run." Those words made Noah look at her longer than he intended. Strength and fear. He had seen it before in people who refused to break. Suddenly, Ranger stiffened. His ears pricked sharply forward, his body angled, protective. Then he released a low rumble deep in his chest. "What is it, buddy?" Noah asked. Ranger lunged toward the alley behind the cafe. Noah followed instantly, Emma right behind him. Snow whipped sideways as they rounded the corner and found a shadowy figure crouched near the cafe's back door, gloved hands gripping a metal tool poised to pry the lock. The man froze. He wore a black hooded jacket, and though his face was partly covered, his darting eyes were pale and frantic. He was slim, perhaps mid-30s, with jittery movements that suggested desperation. His name would later be known as Derek Mills, a former seasonal employee with a reputation for cutting corners and holding grudges. "Hey!" Noah called out, instinct snapping into place. Derek turned and swung wildly, attempting to shove Noah aside. Noah reacted instantly, his left leg protesting, but his reflexes sharp, pulling Emma out of harm's way as Ranger barked with precision, circling and blocking Derek's escape route. Derek panicked and fled into the blowing snow, boots slipping on ice as he vanished between rows of shuttered shops. Emma clutched her chest, breath shaky. "He was trying to break in. Why? Why now?" Noah's jaw tightened. "Because someone wanted evidence planted. Someone who needed you blamed for more than what happened inside." Emma's face paled. "So, this is bigger than Mark?" Noah looked toward the swirling darkness where Derek had disappeared. "Yes," he said softly, "and we need to know who's behind him." Truth in the winter quiet, the storm had not broken, but Silver Creek seemed to breathe differently as the corporate investigation team spread across the snow-packed streets. The morning light filtered through a veil of falling flakes, turning everything pale and muted, as if the town itself were holding its breath for what would come next. Sandra Klein, tall, poised, and sharp as a blade, led the team toward Brookside Café. Her icy blue eyes swept over the waiting crowd, taking in every detail with the accuracy of someone trained to notice what others miss. Behind her walked Elliot Marsh, a corporate analyst in his early 30s. Elliot was a thin, bookish man with sandy blonde hair that refused to stay neatly parted. He wore round wire-frame glasses and carried a tablet against his chest, like it might shield him from conflict. Despite his timid appearance, his mind was quick his observations precise. Years of sorting through financial misconduct had given him a quiet resilience. Noah Hale stepped forward as they approached, the navy coat dusted with snow, Ranger sitting solidly at his heel. The German shepherd's fur bristled lightly, each breath sending tiny clouds into the freezing air. Emma stood just behind Noah, wrapped in a thick gray scarf. Her auburn hair, escaping from her beanie, held specks of snow like scattered stars. She looked anxious, but steadier than the night before. Sandra gave a curt nod. "You must be Mr. Hale," she said. "I've received a copy of the video." Noah's expression stayed calm, though something flickered in his eyes, a hard-earned vigilance. He had spent too many years watching authority fail the people who needed it most. Now he waited to see whether this woman would be different. "I also heard about the intruder," Sandra continued. "We'll need every detail." Noah pointed toward the alley behind the cafe where Ranger had alerted them. "Tracks are still there. Snow hasn't covered them yet, and we found part of a glove snagged on a nail." Sandra motioned to Elliot, who immediately knelt to examine the snow. He removed his gloves, revealing long, delicate fingers that moved quickly despite the cold. Elliot wasn't a man shaped by physical labor. He carried the posture of someone hunched over spreadsheets, yet there was a surprising determination in the set of his jaw. "These prints are recent," Elliot murmured. "Depth suggests a man about 170 to 180 pounds. Running, panicked." Sandra looked up sharply at Noah. "And Mark Lensing claims Emma orchestrated the disturbance?" Noah nodded. "That's what he tried." Sandra's lips thinned into a humorless line. Inside the cafe, staff members huddled nervously as the investigators began interviewing them. Gloria Bennett, a barista in her 40s with warm brown skin and tight black curls streaked with gray, trembled as she recounted what she saw. Gloria was a soft-spoken woman, shaped by years of raising 3 children alone. Her eyes held a mother's worry, but also courage. "Emma never broke rules," Gloria insisted. "She followed every policy. Mark bullied her. We all knew it, but none of us could risk losing ours." Sandra made notes swiftly. Outside, the investigation team traced the footprints through the snow-covered alley, moving toward the woods behind the cafe. The wind sharpened, carrying the scent of pine and frost. Ranger trotted at the lead, nose low, body taut with purpose. Noah followed, his injured knee aching with each step, but he said nothing. The tracks led downhill toward the old logging road, now hidden under layers of ice. And there, barely visible through the snowfall, was a set of fresh tire marks cutting across the unplowed path. A desperate escape. Sandra's brows tightened. He fled in a vehicle. Before they could consider what that meant, the distant rumble of an engine echoed through the trees. Then a sharp screech split the air, followed by a crash. Noah's instincts ignited. He sprinted forward, ignoring the pain that shot up his leg. Ranger bolted beside him, paws flinging snow in every direction. Sandra and Elliot hurried behind, though they struggled to match the speed of a former SEAL fueled by adrenaline. The group reached the bend in the road where a black sedan had lost control, skidding into a ditch and flipping onto its side. Snowflakes swirled around the wreckage, settling on the shattered windshield. Mark Lensing hung halfway out the driver's side window, dazed, his overcoat ripped, a line of blood trailing from his brow. His thin face looked even sharper now, fear hollowing out his features. Emma gasped as she arrived behind Noah. Her hand flew to her mouth. Noah didn't hesitate. He climbed down the slippery embankment, bracing himself with a pine trunk. Ranger followed, positioning himself near the car with a low whine, as if understanding that even enemies deserved safety in this moment. "Don't move," Noah ordered, voice firm but controlled. "You could make the injuries worse." Mark blinked, his breath fogging the cold air. Why are you helping me?" Noah didn't answer at first. He pulled the door open with effort, then eased Mark out, supporting the man's weight on his own shoulder. The snow soaked through Noah's gloves, the icy air burning his lungs. When Mark finally found his voice, it was thin and trembling. "I tried to ruin her," he whispered. "Why would you save me?" Noah met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "Because decency isn't conditional." Emma watched, tears welling, not for Mark, but for the man who lifted him out of the wreck without hesitation. A man who still lived by the code he carried from battlefields long behind him. Moments later, Sheriff Cortez arrived with deputies, followed by Sandra and Elliot. The evidence came together with stunning clarity. Proof of illegal payments, fabricated reports, and ties to contractors who had profited from pushing managers out of their positions. Mark Lensing was arrested in the snow, standing between towering pines that seemed to judge him in silence. Sandra turned to Emma. On behalf of Brookside Corporate, we extend our formal apology. What was done to you was unjust and unlawful. Emma's breath trembled, and she looked at Noah, whose eyes softened, as Ranger leaned gently against her leg. The truth had finally surfaced. Winter, for the first time in weeks, felt less cold. A new winter for two lives. Snow drifted lazily through the quiet morning, gathering along the eaves of Brookside Café like soft white ribbons. Silver Creek had begun to thaw, not from temperature, but from relief. The truth had come out, justice had settled in, and something brighter had taken root in the hearts of the townspeople. Inside the cafe, the air was warm with the smell of fresh pastries and cinnamon. The lights glowed softly against polished wooden tables, many of which now bore small handmade signs from local residents, messages of support, gratitude, and admiration for the woman who had become the unintentional heart of the town. Emma Hartley stood behind the counter, adjusting a new plaque on the wall. Her auburn hair was brushed neatly today, tied loosely at the back, and her pale cheeks glowed with a warmth that hadn't been there before. She wore a simple cream sweater under her apron, looking both confident and overwhelmed by the bustle around her. The plaque read, "Respect lives here, kindness lives here, everyone is welcome." A gift from the corporate office, delivered by Miriam Hale, a senior representative who had driven through a night of snow to hand it over. Miriam was a tall woman in her late 50s, with shoulder-length silver hair, bright hazel eyes, and a dignified presence softened by genuine warmth. Her tailored navy coat and polished boots contrasted with her gentle smile. She was known throughout the company for her strict fairness, but also her humanity. "You've earned this, Emma," Miriam had said before leaving. "Silver Creek is lucky to have you." Now the cafe filled quickly. Veterans who rarely ventured out in winter came with their spouses. Young people with sketchbooks and laptops chose seats near the windows. Even elderly residents who usually avoided crowds arrived bundled in scarves and heavy coats, eager to witness the cafe's rebirth. The bell over the door chimed. Emma looked up instinctively. Snowflakes clung to Noah Hale's coat as he stepped inside, brushing the cold from his shoulders. He looked stronger today, as though the weight he carried had shifted into something steadier, something hopeful. Ranger trotted beside him, tail swaying, his deep brown eyes scanning the room with calm awareness. A hush rippled through the cafe, followed by a wave of applause. It wasn't loud or chaotic, more like a grateful exhale shared by dozens of people. Noah looked startled, one brow lifting. "This for me?" he murmured. Ranger gave a soft huff, as if confirming the obvious. Emma stepped forward, her cheeks flushed a shade deeper than the winter air could cause. "Good morning, Noah." "Morning," he replied, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. "Heard the new manager might need quality control on her coffee." She laughed softly, a sound warmer than the cafe's heater. "I'll allow it." Ranger sat neatly at Noah's side, one ear perked. A little girl in a red puffer coat, Hannah Carter, no older than 6, approached hesitantly with her mother. Hannah was small, with curly dark hair and a missing front tooth that made her smile impossibly sweet. Her mother, Tessa Carter, was a petite woman in her early 30s with a heart-shaped face and soft brown skin, her eyes tired but kind. They had moved to Silver Creek after Tessa's divorce, searching for peace. "Can I pet him?" Hannah asked in a whisper. Tessa touched her daughter's shoulder. "Honey, he's working." Noah crouched down. "Ranger's a service dog," he explained gently, "but he's off duty right now. If he sits when you ask, you can pet him." Hannah whispered, "Sit?" Ranger sat immediately. The girl squealed delightedly and touched his fur with both hands, giggling as Ranger licked her mitten. Emma watched the scene with something soft unfolding inside her. After everything, fear, injustice, humiliation, this simple kindness felt like sunlight piercing through weeks of winter. The cafe buzzed again, but Emma moved closer to Noah. "You came back," she said quietly. He met her eyes, and for once there was no guardedness, only sincerity. "I promised I wouldn't disappear." Snow continued to fall behind him, turning the world outside into a white curtain. Emma took a breath, fighting a smile. "Let me get you your usual." Noah tilted his head. "Actually, Emma, today I want something new." She raised a brow. "Oh, what's that?" "A reason to come back every day." Her breath caught. The warmth that spread across her face was answer enough. though she tried to hide it by reaching for a mug. Ranger's tail thumped once, perceptive as always. Before Emma could speak again, Miriam re-entered briefly to gather her things. She paused, observing the three of them. Emma glowing softly, Noah calmer than she'd ever seen a man with battlefield scars, and Ranger sitting between them like a guardian stitching two broken worlds together. "Merry winter to you both," Miriam said with a knowing nod before slipping out again. Emma exhaled shakily. "Noah, everything that happened—" He stepped closer. "You don't owe me anything for helping you." "I know," she whispered. "That's what makes it mean more." Silence settled between them, not heavy but peaceful, like untouched snow. Then Emma smiled. "Your coffee will be ready in a minute." Noah returned her smile. "I'll be right here." Ranger leaned gently against Emma's leg as if offering congratulations. And in the warmth of a small cafe buried in winter, two lives that had been wandering alone finally began to change course, towards something steady, something healing, something new. In the quiet of Silver Creek's winter, something gentle rose beneath the falling snow. It reminded us that miracles do not always arrive with thunder or lightning. Sometimes they come through simple acts of courage. A woman who refused to turn away, a soldier who still believed in decency, a loyal dog who sensed the truth before anyone else, and all of it woven together by a grace far greater than our understanding. Some call it chance, but many of us know better. We call it God's hand at work. Because in the everyday moments, at a cafe counter, on a cold street, in the silence after heartbreak, He can still place the right people in our path. People who lift us, protect us, or remind us that kindness is never wasted. Even in our hardest seasons, He whispers that new beginnings are possible and light can return in the places we thought were lost. So, as you finish this story, take a moment to look at your own life. Think of the quiet heroes who have stood beside you. Think of the doors God has opened when times felt dark. And remember, sometimes the smallest kindness is the miracle someone prayed for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Leave a comment if you've ever witnessed a moment where God stepped in quietly but powerfully. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join this channel for more stories that honor love, faith, and the courage found in everyday people. May God bless you, protect you, and keep you warm in every winter of your life.